Thanks for your company this evening. Here's a question for you. Do you feel safe when you're driving on a smart motorway without a hard shoulder? Smart motorways have been controversial following deaths on the M1 in South Yorkshire. And in October, you may remember, a software failure meant that stranded vehicles were at risk of being driven into. Today, in an exclusive interview with Look North, National Highways, which manages England's major road network, has admitted there will be further outages, but insists smart motorways are safer than conventional ones. Here's our transport correspondent, Spencer Stokes.
Smart motorways, roads where the hard shoulder has been removed to create more capacity. Radar, electronic gantry signs and CCTV then added to improve safety. But on October the 26th, that safety net disappeared. A software failure saw staff lose control of the signals on smart motorways for nearly 4 hours. They couldn't close any lanes with the red X symbol. That put drivers who had to stop on the motorway at potential risk of being driven into. For the first time, National Highways have spoken about what happened.
So during that period, our ability to set red X's was switched off. That wasn't an ideal situation for us, but it was one we managed through other mitigating measures like extra traffic officer patrols on the network.
But it wasn't just switched off and then on again, it was off for nearly 4 hours. That's a long time for it to be down for.
Unfortunately, when we're bringing the system back up again, we experienced some unexpected faults, and that's why the 2 hours turned into more like 4 hours. We've launched an independent investigation to understand what happened to ensure that we don't have the similar sort of system outages in the future.
The software outage led to outrage from Rotherham's MP Sarah Champion.
Motorists are 100% playing roulette with their lives every time they go on a smart motorway.
And dismay from Claire Mercer, who's campaigned for smart motorways to be scrapped after her husband died when he had to stop on one at Meadowhall in 2019.
National Highways keep peddling the all is well line because they can't afford not to, but it really isn't all is well and people are dying.
So how safe are smart motorways? Surveys show drivers feel less confident and dozens of people have been killed, but National Highways insist they're the safest roads in the country.
If I did experience a breakdown or had an accident, then I would be reassured on a smart motorway that a control room like the one we're sat in can look after me in that situation, and that's not true of other roads.
So can I just check, you would rather stop on a smart motorway than a traditional motorway if you're driving? I just find that surprising, that you'd rather not have a hard shoulder there as a refuge that is continuous all the way along the
So hard
motorway.
shoulders are not safe places. No part of a road is without risk. Tragically, 1 in 12 road deaths every year occurs on the hard shoulder. So my advice to anyone who becomes in trouble on any road is get yourself left, get as far left as you can. On a smart motorway, that will be an emergency area. They're painted orange, there are signs telling you where the nearest one is, and once you're in that emergency area, get out of your vehicle and over the hard shoulder and call for help.
The latest data shows that in 2020, conventional motorways with a hard shoulder carried 16% of all traffic and accounted for 4.5% of all fatalities. In comparison, smart motorways carried less traffic, just 3.3%, but were safer, accounting for 0.64% of fatalities. But the figures are disputed, with critics arguing the data needs to simply address whether the absence of a hard shoulder was a factor in a death or it wasn't a factor.
I think it's very difficult to ascertain the decision-making of drivers when there is and there isn't a hard shoulder as to whether what their behaviour would have been had that hard shoulder been there or not. What I feel personally is that smart motorways provide a level of assurance to me as a motorist that other roads don't.
That extra level of assurance is only there, though, when the technology works, and it will continue to be switched off for maintenance at quiet times. Motorists are not told when.
Normally the system is 100% available.
Apart from when it's off?
Well, as I said, it's normally on all the time. There are certain times when there is planned upgrades, but those are absolutely the exception.
But they still happen. It is still turned off at times when drivers are out on the road.
So I'm not wanting to give you the impression that we switched the system off for any other reasons than essential upgrades, and those are absolutely by exception rather than the norm.
Will there be any of those planned outages over the Christmas period into New Year?
So exactly when we might do some more further maintenance on the system, I couldn't say.
Smart motorways remain controversial. Safety data over a 5-year period is being measured before new ones are constructed. National highways say they are the safest type of road, but drivers remain unconvinced. Spencer Stokes, BBC Look North.
Spencer's here to talk a bit more about that. So, Spencer, you've been covering this story for many years. Remind us, there are 3 different types of motorways, aren't there?
Yeah, it can get confusing for drivers. So there are all lane running motorways like the M1 in South Yorkshire, where the hard shoulder has been permanently converted into a live running lane. Dynamic hard shoulder motorways like the M62 in West Yorkshire, where the hard shoulder opens for traffic at particularly congested times. And then we've got what are called controlled motorways. The M25 in London has sections like this, where there is a hard shoulder only to be used in emergencies, and it's got the overhead gantries with the software and the technology on them to enhance the safety of the motorway.
As we just heard, National Highways are adamant that smart motorways are safest, but campaigners don't agree with that.
They disagree. Yeah, National Highways are using data that shows smart motorways are safer. Campaigners say we need to look at data that shows what happens when vehicles have become stranded or stopped. Now, we have those figures here, and what you can see, this is looking at stopped vehicles, that 0.19 persons are killed or seriously injured on a smart motorway per 100 million vehicle miles, but that drops to 0.09 on a conventional motorway. So by these figures, conventional motorways with a hard shoulder are safer if you have to stop on one. National Highways are cautious about those figures because they say it's a small amount of data and therefore you can't read too much into it. The Rotherham MP, Sarah Champion, though, is very sceptical about what National Highways are saying.
The only conclusion I can draw is that National Highways are deliberately hiding behind very questionable data to justify the inexcusable, really, which is they're putting us on roads that are not safe because there isn't the hard shoulder in place. The fact that whenever we get the data and interrogate it, that holds up that there are things seriously wrong, particularly with all lane running. It just chills me, and we shouldn't be in this situation. I've literally just driven down from the constituency down to London, and most of the M1 now doesn't seem to have a hard shoulder. And it's only when you see that that you realise the scale of this rollout that's still going on.
And following on from what Sarah says there, if there is a Labour government elected, Labour promise to reverse all smart motorways and restore hard shoulders.
Spencer, thank you. We're going to stay with transport now.